Okay. Monday edition of the After Show. Got Wink and Justice with you. Wink over here on the East Coast.
And Justice over here on the west coast of the contiguous United States of America. It is. That's right. Metaphor Mondays. That's what we call Mondays here on the After Show.
Heck yeah.
There are no similes allowed. Not today. What another fun-filled weekend. Wink, how are you doing?
Oh, yeah. Not bad. Not bad. It is a bright, sunny day out there. It looks like the 4th of July. but it is 31 degrees, so it's not the 4th of July. But it is. It looks great out there. It just looks like it's ready. You just want to go out there and jump in a pool or something, but not quite warm enough. Mind you, get in the chat. Just go to netrootsradio.com. Scroll down the bottom of the page, and on the right-hand side of the bottom of the page, there is a link to the chat room. So click that, and join us in the chat today.
And if you take a gander over to the leftish part of the page, you'll notice the contribute donate button.
Yes.
It's there for your use because it's what keeps the lights on here, and we, all kidding aside, thank you for your generosity. Oh, yes. And also you can get after show pods by way of Spreaker.com. Yes. That is the raw data file, comes up fairly immediately, and then the what we like to call the perfected pod is then available on Podbean later. Hey, are we on iTunes anymore?
Yeah, we're still on iTunes.
So you can get them on iTunes.
Yeah.
Stitcher.com is still one that I believe is good. I know that Tom's still doing Stitcher, so we should still have it there.
iHeartRadio, if you dare.
Yeah. We hate iHeart.
Yeah. So,
now, I had a question over social media about do we have a working RSS feed yet?
That I don't know. I guess we can. I guess we can cook one up. I'll look into that.
Yeah, we should
this week.
Okay,
that
good.
way we might be able to just do it that way. I guess people can get.
Yeah, we should do that. Now, I do know that my Daily Coast Diary that I put up the show notes for does have an RSS feed embedded on it.
Oh, okay. So it probably still works. It's probably not that old, I guess. So I'll check.
So,
I'll double check.
No, I'm just noticing that on this version of Coz, there was an RSS feed for my diary.
Oh, okay.
But we had a couple listeners asking about if we had a working one. So I thought I would ask you because I didn't know.
Into it. I didn't really don't know.
Okay,
we'll
good.
look. I can pull one up probably.
All right. Well, here along the banks of the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, it is currently 46 degrees, supposed to go to the low 50s, rain all day, chilly nights down into the mid-30s, though we are supposed to possibly get some snow on Wednesday.
Yeah.
We'll see. But, it's gotten kind of back to winter again, though.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can almost feel spring around the corner.
Oh, yeah, I can.
Oh, boy, another big weekend. We had a Nuremberg rally in Melbourne, Florida with the president-select. I don't know if he's select. I think he was more like installed. The president installed. We'll call it that.
Yeah.
Because, he cannot take criticism, and it's been, some bad days for him. Did you know? How about this little tidbit, Wink? Trump and his family have spent on travel and security in 1 month what Obama spent in a year.
There you go.
And of course, Obama was pilloried for being so lazy. Because, look at the hue of his skin.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all you need to look to know how lazy the guy is, right?
Yeah, there you
right?
go.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, Trump went right out and said that. I mean, he was on the forefront of his criticisms of how much Obama takes off. 1 month, $10 million, buddy. $10 million. Or actually, it might even be more. Maybe it's $100 million. I need to go look back that up. But it's in 1 month what Obama spent in a year. So much for cutting costs. And you're cutting costs like the National Endowment of the Arts, so that you can house your First lady. Well, I don't know what does he call her? His wife, trophy wife. I don't know. I can't figure it out.
I don't know. Yeah.
But she's housed in their palatial digs, in Soho, and that works out with security to be around $100 million, Wink, for the year.
Right.
And of course, it's only like what, $26 million that the National Endowment of the Arts gets for the year.
Yeah, something like that.
So they're going to get cut. So I guess there's some sort of like, when you have a spending or an expenditure, you got to find some place to cut.
Right.
So, it takes a lot. It takes a lot to keep her in the lifestyle that she's been accustomed to. And the White House is just like that. That's slumming. That's got to be slumming to those people.
Yeah.
I don't know. Or as I said, spending that much money is sort of like smudging because of the unruly people that were there before. So you smudge the place kind of like to purify it and everything. So spending that much money, as opposed to how much Obama did, it's sort of like taking some sage and, running around the whole facility and smoking it out. My God, I can't. Oh, and what else? Some more information on Russian connections, and we're going to be attending to that today, actually. David had to take off because it is a holiday. Oh, happy President's Day.
Yeah.
Don't you like how they made it Happy President's Day? That way we don't have to know anything about any particular president.
Right.
Just lump them all together.
Yeah, that's all.
They're all the same. It used to be that it was like Washington's birthday, then it was like Lincoln's birthday, and
Yeah, and if you were in school, you got both those days off. Now you just
Damn
get
right. Damn right. But I think they had to have like a Andrew Jackson memorial, and they couldn't fit it in, and so they decided, well, let's just make it all President's Day.
Yeah.
Well,
yes,
I still have one president right now, and it's not the one that's in the office right now. It's I'm pretty sure it's the guy that was before. So I also love how whenever you hear how things are so much better now with Trump by Trump people.
Yeah.
They always say that they ran Obama from office.
Yeah.
This is I guess that works well with their dimwit supporters who apparently we're supposed to embrace.
Yeah.
We have to figure out a way, because we're going to need those Trump voters to take back the Congress. This is a big opinion piece by a New York Times writer. He himself was quite pilloried by that statement. When you consider the fact of we've tried talking to the Trump voters, we've tried reaching across the aisle. And you know what happens? You get the crap beat out of you. They're the ones that have the T-shirts that say, rope, tree, journalist, some assembly required.
Yeah.
What is that all about? Lock her up, right?
Yeah.
So we're supposed, it's our fault for not engaging them.
Right.
Our fault. Well, no, I think that what it means is that it's our fault for trying to advance our society into, the 21st century. And if we're not careful, it's going to be the 22nd century, and we're still going to be locked in the 17th, if we're lucky.
Right.
Because I'm actually thinking we're going to the 11th.
Yeah, we're going back a ways.
If we were in the 17th century, that's still the Enlightenment. We'd be lucky. But they did burn witches then, so you got to consider that. I think that's what they want. Well, these are the issues we will be attending to today, and they are. A top National Security Council official is fired for criticizing Trump. Yeah, he was in a closed-door meeting with academics at a big national security confab.
Right.
And, Trump plants were there, and we got back to Trump and said, hey, yeah, that guy criticized you. Out of here. Wow. After a closed-door meeting with FBI Director James Comey, The Senate Intelligence Committee orders more than a dozen agencies and individuals to preserve all records related to the Russian sabotage of the 2016 election. And a big shoe just dropped about the Trump-Russia connection after reports of meetings with Felix Sater surfaces. Felix Sater? I don't know Felix Sater. Well, if you don't know who Felix Sater is, trust me. Believe me. Donald Trump does, even though he denies it. Oh, and on the last half, we report that contrary to right-wing myths and Trump's insistence, though he's never actually said these words himself, but trust me, he will, there is no American deep state. You know, whenever we hear the deep state leaked.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
Deep state has a particular meaning, and we need to be very careful, especially us on the left, if we are assigning it to some sort of security apparatus, because that's not really what it means. So there is no American deep state, and we'll have to look into a little bit of Turkish politics to find out why the term originated there. Interesting, huh? And revered activist and politician and an acquaintance of mine, revered activist and politician Tom Hayden, was remembered at a touching memorial at UCLA yesterday. I don't mean to name drop, but yeah, I had a little bit of contact with Tom Hayden, and he was a nice guy. And it's kind of funny, even though he was an idol of mine because of politics.
Yep.
I met him at a poetry reading in Santa Monica. I mean, of all the politics I was involved in, I even met his wife before she was his wife. Right, because of politics. But I never ran into Tom Hayden until I was at a poetry reading that I was giving at the time. And so, yeah, sporadic contact, but I always looked. He was a hero of mine when I was a kid. So gathering yesterday to remember and give a little bit of memorializing for a good man. All that, plus the Connect, Unite, Act Daily Coast community calendar and more. There's even more here on the after show with that ever so fine fellow over there on the East Coast with his East Coastal elitism. Oh yeah, you know it's there, and his name is Wink. And this guy all the way back over here on the West Coast. And yeah, well, you can tell how elitist I am. Why would I hide it? I embrace it. The men and women of the Enlightenment were elitists.
There you go. Yeah.
Okay?
Yep.
That's who we should aspire to. At least the good parts.
Yeah.
And my name is Justice, and we do this 5 days a week in this particular tear in the fabric of space-time because, well, who loves you, baby? We do. That's right. We do. Well, Milo, I don't know. He may be going down. He's going to be the keynote. For now, he's supposed to be the keynote speaker at CPAC. But a video YouTube surfaced of him essentially, how shall I put this? Advocating pedophilia. And particularly man-boy pedophilia, because that's his particular, peculiarity, shall we say, how peculiar it is. Now, of course, he represents the party of moral superiority. It's us. We liberals come off as being morally superior. And I'm with Kylie Joy Gray on this. I believe 100% that I am morally superior to any Trump supporter. I believe that 100%. I'm not the one running around there with the news saying, lynch him. So don't talk to me about, they always act so morally superior because, we have to be pure. Well, yeah, maybe, not being so anti-Semitic or knee-jerk bigoted. You can't call them bigoted, even though, part of their complaint, their grievance, is that they are under attack by multiculturalism and political correctness. And what is that? Yeah, black and brown people and, what they aren't. But here we have Milo, Wink. Milo And he kind of gave an apology for the pedophilia that happened in the Catholic Church and why he thinks that a 30-year-old guy should, I don't know, mentor a 15-year-old boy. And this is the party and the ideology of moral standing, Wink.
Yeah.
Religious.
Yep.
Solid religious bearing. Of course, as this is coming to light, it's the libertine philosophies of the left that allowed a Milo to rise. And I'm thinking, well, how do you explain a Roy Cohn then, or a Henry Hyde, or a Newt Gingrich, or a David Vitter? How do you explain them?
Yeah.
You mean it was because of Democrats and liberals that allowed society to descend into this whatever? But the only people that act out in the weird sick, well, I wouldn't say the only people. But I don't know. It just kind of cracks me up. We got people now who are called Trump supporters who think that Russia, what's wrong with Russia? We've never been enemies of Russia. I mean, I hear people saying this. When were we enemies of Russia?
Yeah. When was
I swear to God. And now it's like, oh yeah, gay pedophilia. There's nothing wrong with that as long as we get to kick hippies.
Yeah.
So don't talk to me about liberals coming off as being morally superior. We are morally superior.
Here you go.
I kind of, now some people may take issue with this, but I believe the Pope is tremendously morally superior to me. But I'm certainly not going to get pissed off at him about it and say, well, he should change and not be so morally superior. Shouldn't I change and rise my own level of integrity to that pillar of, like I'm saying, some people can disagree with it. But if we take the Pope or, I don't know, the Dalai Lama is morally superior to me. Am I going to be pissed off at the Dalai Lama because he doesn't come down into the muck that I exist in? No, I should evolve. Well, that's why we are liberals, because we have this self-reflection, Wink, and apparently on the other side, we have to figure out a way of speaking with them, embracing them.
It's all about kicking the hippies. Nothing else matters. They don't care about,
And if the hippie happens to be a black, Hispanic, lesbian, feminist, whatever, then it's even more fun.
Yeah.
Okay, an NSC official fired for criticizing Trump. This comes out in Newsweek by Nicholas Lofredo. A Trump administration official has been fired for remarks made behind closed doors that were critical of Donald Trump's policies and advisors. Oops. How dare a professional. I love this. Okay, Craig Deere, who was appointed to head the National Security Council's Western Hemisphere Division, was escorted out by police out of the executive office building in Washington on Friday after reports of his comments emerged. He's out of here. Dean allegedly criticized Trump chief strategist Steve Bannon and Trump's remarks on Mexico. Well, who wouldn't?
Exactly.
I mean, Bannon is a Nazi. And Trump's comments about Mexico was pretty, stupid. We're still trying to right the ship on that one. Deere also expressed frustrations over a lack of access to the president, saying that Trump's closest advisors have ignored the National Security Council as it formulates relevant policies. Well, that's how all cults are, Wink. You have sycophants in concentric circles around the guru, the cult leader. You have to get through them before you ever get, and you may not even be able to talk to the cult leader, but somebody will talk to him for you. Don't worry. Dean has reportedly returned to his former job at the National Defense University, where he most recently was Dean of Administration. Sources told CBS that Deere allegedly made awkward comments on the attractiveness of Trump's daughter, Ivanka Trump, also at the Wilson Center meeting. I don't know what that means, awkward comments. Well, whatever. Probably not a good idea. Though I have, when Melania Trump, this is how I love how the media works, like, the fake media, lying media. Well, they are a little bit. But they say that she recited the Lord's Prayer at this Nuremberg rally at an aircraft hangar and airport hangar in Melbourne, Florida, right? She didn't recite the Lord's Prayer. She read the Lord's Prayer. She can't recite the Lord's Prayer. And somebody said, well, she probably doesn't know it in this language.
Yeah.
I guess that's an excuse.
Yeah.
But I would also make note that, she comes from a Russian Orthodox religiosity. And she read the Lord's Prayer with the Protestant ending, which is a sin in Russian, Greek, Orthodox, and Roman Catholic practices.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yep.
You don't include that last part, forever and ever. For thine is the power and the glory forever and ever. Amen. Exactly. That's not part of the Lord's Prayer that
was handed down.
Yeah, just saying. That came after Martin Luther. Okay, this article then goes through a litany of about this tumultuous week as Mike Flynn's resigned, and now there's about his alleged discussions. I like how they say alleged discussions. Well, I guess it is, because the tapes will be coming out, and then we'll hear it for ourselves. And Trump didn't obviously send him out there to talk about policy in contravention of the fact that they weren't even president yet. I mean, what are we talking about? Do you remember what this was about, Wink? 35 Russian spies were duly told to leave the country. This country.
Right.
When the investigation showed that the Russians were sabotaging our election. And so the sanctions were 35 of those, and they're spies. Call them diplomats. Yeah, right. Spies. And Flynn said, "Don't do anything. We'll get your guys back. Don't worry. I'm here for you." And he was sent by Trump to say this, and now Trump's saying, I don't know why he would be advancing my policy. Now, I didn't tell him, but I wish I had, right? Which is the tell. He did say. And then, of course, Bannon, being former chairman of Breitbart News, elevated to the NSC's Principals Committee via Trump executive order. And that's why it's been so difficult trying to find a replacement for Flynn. Haywood. Sorry, but the former Navy SEAL and from all accounts, very, very, very qualified for the job. The only thing is that qualifications aren't enough. And he termed it a shit sandwich. And what's a shit sandwich? Yeah, that's a suicide mission. Going into this administration is a shit sandwich, according to the military. Now, I did hear that the Army Secretary, the nominee for that, has not backed out of that position, but we'll see. By the end of the day, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Will change. This next article is by the great T-Bug out of Raw Story. The Senate Intelligence Committee has ordered more than a dozen individuals and agencies to preserve records related to Russian interference in the 2016 U.S. elections, according to the AP. And I don't know, we got to take, let's be somewhat careful here. There has been some news floated that could be a little bit of counterinsurgency type strategies, Wink, where The administration would float a story that they know to be false. It gets picked up. They can point to it and say, look at that fake, look at that Lügenpresse, the lying press, right? But according to the AP, a congressional aide confirmed that the committee had sent formal requests that all materials related to Russian meddling be preserved. The AP notes that letters were a bipartisan affair with both the panel's chairman, Richard Burr, and vice chairman Mark Warner signing on. The letters on Friday come on the heels of that closed-door meeting with FBI Director James Comey, who spent nearly 3 hours answering questions Friday afternoon in a secure room in the Senate basement used for classified briefings. Now, Trump and his team have been saying that the only reason we know that this meeting took place is because of the leaks from the deep state, right? Who are out to get Trump. No, actually how it happened is that Comey, who is a fairly imposing figure, he's about 6'8", 6'9", right? Very tall fellow, was seen walking through the Senate chambers to this gift room by reporters who were, stationed there. And it's unusual to see the FBI director walking down the halls of the Senate and then go into a secure room. And then other senators from the Senate Intelligence Committee and other duly appointed committees of like concern were also meeting with him. Interesting. Trump is coming under increasing scrutiny for his administration's ties to Russia, and reports that his campaign staff were repeatedly in contact with Russian intelligence officials during the 2016 campaign. And of course, we also know it was before. We know that Trump has had long-term connections with Russia business interests since the 80s, late 80s, even before, right during Glasnost. Trump's appointee for National Security Advisor General Mike Flynn stepped down over his contacts with Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak and his subsequent lies to the American public and Vice President Mike Pence about those calls. He didn't lie to Mike Pence. That's their excuse. Give me a break. And Politico reported that some House Democrats were concerned that Republicans would destroy documents related to the investigation of Flynn. Democratic members of the House Intelligence Committee sent a letter to the Office of the White House Counsel asking that documents related to Flynn and his conversations with Kislyak be preserved. You don't ask, you tell him. What? Asking? Wow. We live in different times, Wink. I don't remember anybody asking Obama to do shit. They told him what to do and when to do it and how high to jump doing it.
Yeah.
And when he did, they always said, that's not good enough. Oh, yeah, change CPI. Not good enough. We'll cut Social Security. No, we want it all done. Not good enough. Don't ask. Please. Okay, this next article is by Josh Marshall from Talking Points Memo. I don't know how much attention is received, but the appearance of the name of Felix Sater in this new article in the Times is one of the biggest shoes I've seen drop on the Trump story in some time. The new story explains that a group of Trump operatives, including top lawyer Michael Cohen and fired former campaign manager Paul Manafort, along with pro-Putin Ukrainian parliamentarian named Andrei V. Artemenko and Mr. Sater, are pushing Trump on a, quote, peace plan, end quote, for Russia and the Ukraine. Cohen recently met with Sater and Artemenko, and Cohen agreed to personally deliver the peace plan, actually a sealed envelope with documents detailing it, to Trump when he met with him at the White House. Cohen says he left it with General Flynn days before Flynn was forced to resign. The backstory to all this is amazingly Byzantine and murky, so let me try to cover the key points as simply as I can. And of course, this is Josh Marshall. Having spent some time studying the matter, The biggest red flags about Donald Trump's ties to Russia and businessmen around Vladimir Putin have always been tied to the Trump Soho building project in Lower Manhattan. And that was from the first decade of this century. Marshall bases his knowledge on this rather cursory but still quite good April 2016 article that is linked in the link to the article. So you'll go to my show notes and you'll find that. And Marshall's own limited scooping around the outer boroughs of Russian and Ukrainian immigrant press. That's smart. Now, I've summarized the most salient details of an earlier Times article in item 3 of this post. This was a key project, perhaps the key project in the post-bankruptcy era in which Trump appeared heavily reliant on Russian funds to finance his projects. Sater was at the center of that project. The details only came to light after the project got bogged down in a complicated series of lawsuits. After the lawyers got involved, Trump said he barely knew who Sater was, but there is voluminous evidence that Sater, a Russian immigrant, was key to channeling Russian capital to Trump for years. Sater is also a multiple felon and at least a one-time FBI informant. Bayrock Capital, where he worked, was located in Trump Tower, and he himself worked as a special advisor to Trump. Don't know him. He's your special advisor. Barely. Again, read the Times article to get a flavor of his ties to Trump, the Trump Soho project, and Russia. For my money, there's no better place to start to understand the Trump-Russia issue. Now, he also goes on, I'll sum up here quickly so we can go to break. Trump's relationship with Sater might be written off, albeit not terribly plausibly, as simply a sleazy relationship Trump entered into to get access to capital he needed to finance his projects. Now, remember why he needed to go to mobsters to do this. Because no reputable bank would loan him any money because he defaulted and then sued him to try to get out of his loans. And he did that so many times, the bank said, well, we're not lending this guy anymore. And now he's president of the United States. But now we learn that Sater is still very much in the Trump orbit and acting as a go-between, linking Trump and a pro-Putin Ukrainian parliamentarian, pitching peace plans, which they are not, by the way, for settling the dispute between Russia and Ukraine. You know, the Ukraine that they're trying to annex with the rest of Crimea. Jesus. And then, of course, Trump's lawyer, Cohen, not to be confused with Roy Cohn, the McCarthy-era lawyer who mentored Trump in Cohen's last days, but this other Cohen who has a certain sleaze factor of his own, and whenever he shows up, there's something weird going on. All right, well, let's get to our Jim Hightower break, and we'll come back, go through the Connect, Unite, Act Daily Coast community calendar, and then the stories for the last half. You're listening to the After Show on Netroots Radio with Wink and Justice, and we will be right back.
Remember way back in time, back in the old days of 2016. Back then, Trump was on the political stump, promising that by gollies he would stop Wall Street bankers from scamming and robbing consumers and workers. Where did that guy go? To Wall Street. Once ensconced in the White House, Trump has openly betrayed us by helping the financial powers get more power to gouge. In fact, he has even put 6 Goldman Sachs executives in America's top economic policy positions. For example, one obscure Goldman Sacker named Steve Mnuchin is now honcho of the Treasury Department, overseeing America's economy. Aside from the fact that he played an ugly role in Wall Street's foreclosure frenzy, having forced some 10,000 homeowners out of their homes, Mnuchin also has an honesty problem. In submitting his statement of personal wealth to the U.S. Senate, Oops, he failed to include $100 million in wealth that he had stashed in an offshore tax haven. Not trying to hide anything, just an oversight, he assured senators, claiming he was confused by the Senate's complicated financial reporting forms. Really? If this big-time banker can't keep track of $100 million worth of his own real estate assets, why trust him to handle the ultra-complex wealth of our nation? Is he lying or just incompetent? This is Jim Hightower saying, far from protecting us from Wall Street greed, Trump's Goldman Sachs Alumni Club is pushing so-called reforms to protect Wall Street from us. Their first move is to try killing the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the only federal agency whose only priority is to protect common consumers from credit card gouging, bank fraud, predatory payday lenders, and other corporate thievery. Trump's reforms are the biggest fraud of all. To battle them, contact Consumer Federation of America at consumerfed.org.
Need an antidote to the progressive blues? Want some good news about how grassroots folks are rebelling against the corporate powers and winning? Well, here's an easy-to-swallow pill for you, the Hightower Lowdown. Hightower's monthly newsletter will give you the lowdown, even as it lifts you up. It's 4 pages a month, jam-packed with facts you can use, actions you can take, and Jim's own Texas humor. All for only $15 a year. To become a lowdowner, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
Okay, we're back.
And indeed, we are back, and thank you for sticking with us. This is the After Show with Wink and Justice. Justice here along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the West Coast. Wink is in upstate New York 21 on the East Coast. Our crew are the ethereal creatures who reside in the cloud, whose advanced intergalactic technical abilities allow Netroots Radio, and thus by extension the After Show, to span the globe, the solar system, past the Oort cloud, into frozen interstellar space, way past that bridge of stars. Oh yeah, and beyond. I love that, a bridge of stars between galaxies.
Yeah.
It's kind of neat. Yep. Oh, it looks like the Jupiter mission has been changed subtly. They had a problem. They were going to dip into a much tighter orbit. Right now, they're in an orbit that circles Jupiter every 53 days, I believe, 56 days. And they were going to dip into an orbit where they would circumvent the planet, or circle the planet in about 2 weeks, right? But because of a problem with a fuel valve or whatnot, because of the delay between sending the order and whatnot, there's some sort of problem that they hadn't been able to reverse engineer and figure out how to fix. And so there was a possibility that if it didn't open at the proper time, that it could send the craft out into space and then the mission would be lost. So rather than risk it, they're going to stay at that much wider orbit.
Yep.
Now, of course, they had expected to have, 36 missions. Now they're going to be down to a little less than 24. So because of the higher orbit, but because of the radiation that's emanated at that, that orbit that's further away, means that the spacecraft may not be bombarded and get damaged. So they may actually have a longer mission than they anticipated. So I just thought that was fairly interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, today's Connect, Unite, Act Daily Coast community calendar is facilitated by Chi-Town Kev, and his question today is, do you have any superstitions? And do you have any, Wink? Do you have to put on a couple of bracelets when your team's playing to make sure they win?
No, I don't think I have any off the top of my head.
You don't walk? Do you walk under ladders?
Yeah, I walk under ladders, all that stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, me too.
I don't really have any superstitions that I can think of.
Yeah, I always notice this seems like universal. Baseball players, and whatever, little league all the way up,
Yeah.
always have some sort of superstition about.
Oh yeah, they do. They do.
It could be as simple as how they wiggle their butt when they're getting ready to swing the bat or something, or how many times they hit their mitt when they're out in the field. Some of those become, if I don't do that, if I don't lock or unlock or lock and unlock the door 3 or 4 times, I don't feel safe.
Right.
That's also considered to be compulsive obsessive behavior too, which isn't really a mark of being a balanced personality. So the idea of superstition's always kind of,
right.
I don't know. It offended me in some ways, because why would I want to be fearful or think that I might fail at something because I didn't do some sort of arbitrary order of things? It just never made sense. Why would black cats be unlucky, but calico cats aren't?
Right.
Right. I never figured that one out. Well, I did figure it out, and I don't know.
Yeah, I just never. I think maybe as a kid I might have had 1 or 2, but you kind of outgrow it. It's just one of those things that you outgrow as you, as you get older. That's all.
When the stories of like, you better go to sleep or the boogeyman will get you.
Yeah.
That didn't put me to sleep. I wanted the boogeyman to come, because there might be something more exciting than the backwater small town I lived in.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
You mean somebody's going to take me away from this boring place? Yeah, give it to me.
Yeah, bring it on.
Let's see. I did have a friend who said that he never wanted the lights on at night, because that way the monsters can't see you. Where other kids wanted the light on so they could see the monsters. I always liked that turnabout. Well, that way, if the lights are all off, the monster can't see me. All right, good. Yeah, I never believed in monsters. It's so easy as an adult to say, oh yeah, I never believed in this, I never believed in that. But I wasn't really a big believer in Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny. I mean, at an early age, none of it made sense.
Right.
Right. I was more enamored with the story of like what we were told, Santa Claus may not actually exist, but the spirit of sharing and giving and, community and communion and all that the spirit of Santa Claus exists. And so I always liked that,
Oh, hell yeah.
The spirit of giving. And It wasn't about receiving either. Like, I can't wait to get my, well, of course we all did.
Yeah.
We wanted a bicycle.
Yeah.
And we were happy when we got the bicycle. But I got to say, I was also happy when someone was happy with their gift that we gave them. So how did Santa figure into that? It just never made any sense to me. Okay, upcoming events. You'll mark your calendar. April 22nd, 9 a.m. to noon. The LA Cossacks will be marching for science in Los Angeles. Susan's is coordinating the group to meet up and then take part in that march. So do cosmail her for more details. And also check out the Connect Unite Act Daily Coast Community Diary for updates as they come. Also mark your calendars. June 30th through July 2nd is the Epic Glacier National Park Meetup, 3rd annual, by the way. Thinking Fella and Ojibwa are the organizers, so cosmail them. But also, this gives you another incentive to go to the diary. And you'll need to go to the link for important planning details. And while you're there, you might as well peruse the rest of the diary and look at all the great photos of meetups that just happened this last weekend, by the way.
Yes.
And it looks like, yes, indeed, that is your Connect, Unite, Act Daily Coast Community Calendar for the 20th of February of 2017. Oh, I should note real quick is that Navajo does take care of all the listings, so cosmail her if you have an event or a meetup that you want to organize and take part in and have your fellow Cossacks attend.
Yes.
So once again, that is your Connect Unite Act Daily Coast Community Calendar for today. All right. Pardon me. Uh-oh. What did they do? Okay, here we go. Well, contrary to right-wing myths, now they want me to do this. Okay, this out of the Atlantic, which has all sorts of like pop-ups and even, my ad blocker asked me, these people want to send you stuff, even though you have ad block directed advertising, even though you have ad block. Do you want ad block to block it? I said, hell yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess the Atlantic is one of those. I need to actually go to the library and, open up the magazine. This is by David A. Graham out of the Atlantic. Experts on Turkish politics say the use of the term deep state misunderstands what it means in Turkey and the ways that such allegations can be used to enable political repression. And that's what we're talking about here. We got to be careful with our terms and what we call the deep state and what they mean by it. Because the first time I heard deep state, I've heard it bantered about by some liberals, but it also had a kind of Alex Jones InfoWars thing to it. There were some liberals back in Bush days, G.W. Bush days, that looked at Alex Jones and InfoWars as maybe being because Jones wasn't a big fan of Bush and all that, right? But talk about superstition when they started talking about the Illuminati and the Rothschilds and all that. I went, oh man, that old thing, I'm out of here. I'm not listening. This guy's a Looney Tune.
Yeah.
Right. And then he, went markedly more right. So, we knew what his true colors were. But that's where I heard the term deep state. But I heard it in terms of a kind of anti-Semitic connotation, like the worldwide banking system, which always has a, Jewish connotation to it.
Yep.
So it kind of offended me. Whenever I hear deep state, I feel I'm hearing about this anti-Semitic power struggle of, the Jews trying to take over the world or something. The New World Order is also, the Nazis take that attitude really with, the Jewish bank. When you hear Jewish banker, we know what they mean, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Well, there are. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped a little bit here. Okay, over the last week, the idea of a deep state in the U.S. has become a hot concept in American politics. The idea is not new, but a combination of leaks about President Trump and speculation that bureaucrats might try to slow walk or undermine his agenda. Coffee. Yeah, I like coffee.
Indeed.
Have given it fresh currency. A story in Friday's New York Times, for example, reports, quote, as leaks multiply, fears of a deep state in America, end quote. It's an idea that this David Graham touched on in discussing the leaks. While there are various examples of activity that has been labeled as originating from a deep state, from Latin America to Egypt, the most prominent example is Turkey, where state institutions contain a core of die-hard adherents to the secular nationalism of Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, which is increasingly being eroded by the government of Erdogan. Turkey has seen a series of coups stretching back to 1960, as well as other activity attributed to a deep state. Now, it's interesting to note that what this deep state means here in Turkey is the forces of modernity arrayed against the forces of Erdogan, who wants to take back and, I guess, rebuild the Ottoman Empire, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And yet, the deep state is considered possibly a danger, no matter whether it's coming from the left or the right. We'll go on here. It's tempting to view the leaks about General Michael Flynn and other matters as a push to undermine the Trump presidency, though well short of coup, and therefore to compare it to the Turkish deep state. Some progressives have expressed a hope that bureaucracy might serve as a check on Trump, though they have generally avoided calling this a deep state. But Trump's defenders, both in Congress and on the fringe right, have employed the term, as have centrist observers and leftist critics of the national security state. And I'm looking at you, Greenwald. Trump has not yet used the phrase, but it seems like only a matter of time before it pops up in some late night or early morning tweet. When he hears it on Fox enough, we'll be hearing it from him. But experts on Turkey are not so quick to follow suit. They see a couple of problems with the analogy. First, it's not a precise application of the term. It portrays any sort of resistance to the regime as a deep state, failing to isolate what truly makes the shadowy structures in places like Turkey different. Second, a review of Turkish politics over the last decade shows the dangers in allowing a deep state to become a real menace in the public mind. Be careful playing with the deep state idea because it can so easily get out of control that it becomes a monster that helps whoever's in charge curb freedom and intimidate dissidents because it's such a nebulous concept, said Soner Kagbate, who directs the Turkish research program at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy. You don't have to prove that it exists. Once the notion is out there and the public starts to believe it, anybody can be attached to it. And that's where the danger is. Because what Erdogan has done, even though these leaks may not be coming from, quote, a deep state, he can be blamed on that. And those actors are obviously in opposition to whatever he wants to do, so therefore they're the enemy of the state. We're hearing a little bit of that echo when Trump calls the press the enemy of the American people, which I have to say flies in the face of everything we know about America, since the press is the only institution protected in the Constitution.
Right.
First Amendment, right there. It's all well and good to argue that there are similarities between the Turkish deep state and American resistance to Trump. There are even some shared elements, like the presence of a core of career government employees who see themselves as the last line of defense for long-standing national values against an insurgent president seeking to tear them down. It's also interesting that members of the military have seemed wary of Trump, warning of the importance of NATO and pushing back on reported plans to bring back torture, just as the military is the bastion of secularism in Turkey. As Kagbate puts it, Turkey has historically had 3 checks on government power, 2 democratic, the courts and the media, and the third undemocratic, and that would be the military. 3 superficial similarities threaten to overshadow some of the deeper differences, though. Zeynep Tufekci, a Turkish sociologist and writer at the University of North Carolina, tweeted a string of criticisms about the analogy. Permanent bureaucracy or non-electoral institutions diverging with the electoral branch is not that uncommon, even in liberal democracies, she wrote. In the Turkey case, that's not what it means. There was a shadowy, cross-institution, occasionally armed network conducting killings and etc. So if people are going to call non-electoral institutions stepping up, leaking stuff, fine, but it's not deep state like in Turkey. So what we're talking about is that a non-democratic institution, which would be the military, is also involved in this for good or ill. So we don't have that here, not in terms of what they mean by deep state as it was originally formulated. The tale of Erdogan and the deep state may have a great deal to teach Americans about the deep state, but it also might teach some lessons about Trump. Consider the trio of checks and balances on the Turkish government, the media, the courts, and the deep state. Trump spent large portions of his bizarre, rambling press conference on Thursday railing against the media and the courts, working to undermine their credibility and their influence as a check on his policies, an echo of the way Erdogan has railed against them in Turkey. The U.S. may not have a real deep state, but that doesn't mean the U.S. president can't borrow his tactics from countries that do. Indeed. Okay. And this article is out of the LA Times by Michael Finnegan. When Robert Kennedy was assassinated in 1968, the senator's family picked Tom Hayden to be an honorary pallbearer at the funeral because the young anti-war activist embodied the great hope that my father, Robert Kennedy Jr., recalled Sunday, that my father had in the future of our country. Hayden, who died in October at the age of 76, had been one of the first white students from northern states to join blacks in Freedom Ride protests against segregation in the South. He'd gotten beaten up by police in Mississippi and gone to jail for his beliefs in Georgia. Now, Kennedy said, Hayden had joined those in heaven who spent their lifetime fighting for justice and fighting for the poor. He's there with my father and with Martin Luther King, and they are right now exhorting that when we leave this hall, we go out into the streets and onto the barricades, and we fight to reclaim our country from these very, very, very bad people, Kennedy said to a round of applause. Hayden died just 2 weeks before Donald Trump was elected president, but none of the roughly 1,000 people who gathered to remember him doubted how vigorously he would have fought Trump's administration. The service opened with one civil rights march song, Keep Your Eyes on the Prize, and closed with another, Ain't Nobody Gonna Turn Me Around. Joining a 4-person choir in the final number were singers Bonnie Raitt, Holly Near, and Barbara Williams, Hayden's wife, along with a couple's son, Liam Hayden, and Hayden's ex-wife, Jane Fonda. Hayden was in the vanguard of the 1960s countercultural movement, a radical who led civil rights and anti-war protests, and later became a prolific author and member of the California legislature. Hayden was the lead author of the Port Huron Statement, a 1962 student manifesto that served as the foundation for protests against the Vietnam War. President Nixon's Justice Department prosecuted Hayden in the raucous Chicago 7 trial after violent clashes between police and protesters at the 68 Democratic National Convention. 2 of his co-defendants, Rennie Davis and John Froines, attended the service. Hayden and Fonda were a major force in California politics in the 70s and 80s, and Hayden went on to represent the liberal West Side in the state assembly and Senate for 18 years. Tom Hayden was our friend, and boy, could we use his voice right now, said Father Greg Boyle, the Homeboy Industries founder, who worked with Hayden on efforts to rehabilitate gang members. One former gang member, Alex Sanchez, paid tribute to Hayden for leading him away from a life of crime and violence. He believed in me, Sanchez told the audience as tears rolled down his cheeks. He believed in change. He did not see my tattoos. He didn't see that I was from the most infamous gang. He saw me. Hayden's critics, and there were many, were given a voice in a couple of video snippets, including one that focused on his 3 years of community organizing in poor black sections of Newark in the mid-'60s. He was a bum, Hayden critic Anthony Imperial of the Newark Citizens Committee was shown saying to a burst of laughter and applause at Royce Hall. He was a troublemaker, and to this day he's a troublemaker. I love it. Organizing blacks to vote in Newark. That made him a troublemaker. Yeah. Troy Garrity, the son of Hayden and Fonda, told the crowd it was slightly difficult being the son of a communist radical and Hanoi Jane and having our house lit on fire. Well, not really, but almost. He choked up about footage showing cops beating up his father and paid tribute to everybody in the movement who lost somebody. Don't mourn, he said. Organize. Fonda recalled meeting Hayden at one of her slide presentations against the Vietnam War. His hair was braided down his back, and he wore a beaded headband and black rubber sandals that the Vietnamese had made out of the tires of a downed U.S. airplane. The next day, he showed her his own slideshow, which focused on Vietnamese history. He talked about how the villagers buried their dead in the rice fields so that generation after generation could be nourished by the bones of their ancestors, she said. Bombing those fields took on a new meaning. She recalled traveling to college campuses around the country with Hayden in the early 70s in their campaign to end the war, and the homes of activists who let them spend the night. God, I remember water beds, she said. I do too. Until they actually made them into flotation devices. No one liked water beds, Wink.
Exactly. Yep.
Williams spoke just a few lines about her husband before singing a folk song about pushing a rock uphill. Hayden, she said, had been her teacher for 26 years. The important lesson, she recalled, was never give up. Indeed. All right. Well, that brings us to the close of our broadcast period, and we got Tom Hartman coming up here about 6 minutes after the hour. We'll be listening to Buzu Bayou's Night Over Manassas in the interim. Let's see. Of course, Randy Rhodes will be back live today, and
yes.
She's got a lot to say too. I don't need to tell you that, but tune in for that. That'll come up at 1 p.m. on the West Coast, 4 p.m. on the East. And I would suggest just listening to Networks Radio 24/7, 365. And why? Well, because who loves you, baby? Okay, Wink. I will see you on the other side.
All right. Well,